Okay, this is part 3 of how to make a World Trade Center station replica in Trainz, the old one. Unfortunately, I still can't find any pictures of the inside of the real train station, so I'm gonna have to use my imagination a bit when making it. For example, that picture I was talking about earlier that had tracks with white concrete and white platforms and everything. I did a bit of research and found out that's actually a picture of the new station, not the old one. So, unfortunately, I still don't have a good replica. I still don't have a good picture to model after. So what I'm gonna have to do is basically imagine what the station might look like, because all the pictures I found of the station, they were all taken like after the attack, so they didn't really give me much information of what the station looked like in normal service. I still can't find any pictures of that station despite looking for hours on Google Images. The only thing they have is pictures of the new PATH station that opened recently. And a few pictures of the New York City subway station, but again, I'm not sure if that's the old station or the new one. So what I'm basically going to have to do is model after that picture, pretending that the new station existed back then, basically, because it's the only picture I could find to model after. In that station, they had tracks that looked very similar to this one. They had the tracks of course had a third rail because these were electric trains. And they were supported by concrete blocks like this one. These tracks, unlike the tracks I was using earlier, are a little bit harder to figure out where they should go because they don't have anything underneath them. So I'm gonna have to put a train on this track every time I want to check its alignment. It's a little bit too close to the platform right now. If it were that close, it would have hit the platform and probably derailed. I'm trying to remember, when was the first time I actually saw the World Trade Center? I think it was when I was little and I was in the Liberty Science Center looking through these binocular type things. You know those things you have to put a quarter in to see? I also saw the Statue of Liberty through it. Probably. You know, when I was little, I was actually excited about flying in a plane. I thought it would be really nice if I could fly in one of those, but then I saw that thing on the news and I'm like, I don't trust airplanes anymore, at all. I will never get inside one if I can help it. Everyone I know tried to convince me, you know, planes are safe, and I'm like, you can't convince me after I saw what just happened. And then someone told me, well, what are you going to do if you're on a business trip and you gotta take the plane? I'm going to be like, I'm going to trade my plane ticket for an Amtrak ticket, if they let you do that. I don't trust planes at all. This track is obviously too close to the platform. Okay, move it like there. Okay, what next? I guess what I should do is extend these tracks a little bit so that I can work on the tunnel. Well, according to one old station map I managed to find, all these 4 tracks merged as one coming from the tunnel, and then they split into 4 to go through the station, and then they merged back into one going around the loop back into another tunnel that led to Exchange Place. So that's basically what I'm gonna have this do. Okay, now when making a switch using tracks that have third rails, Obviously, the third rails have to be on the outside of the tracks, so that basically, so you won't have it looking like, oh, does it let you do switches on this track? You don't want it looking like this, where the third rail actually goes through one of the tracks. The third rail always has to be on the outside of the track. It doesn't matter which side of the track the third rail is on, because the train can pick up power from both sides. They thought of everything when they invented this system. So, this is what the tracks look like. The third rail is on the correct side. There's really no way to make the frog of this switch realistic on this game. The game doesn't really understand those. However, there is some way I can make it make a realistic sound with this thing called a... Hold on, let me find it. It's still loading. It's still loading. What's all this stuff under track objects? Cars? That's weird. Anyway, this is called a clickety-clack trigger. And just as the name implies, it makes the sound of a train going over a switch when it runs over this trigger. That way you can make it so that the train makes a sound when it goes over this frog as well. The tracks are facing the wrong way, aren't they? And they're facing... If I remember correctly, the trains came into the station from the west. So I'm gonna have to make it go like that way when it goes into the tunnel. Well, okay then. No problem. Okay, the third rail's on the right side. So what I'm gonna do is this. Oh, I think I forgot to download those. I'll look for them later. Okay, switch levers. What do we have that looks like the type of switch lever a path train would use? It's probably going to be an automatic one. So, if I type in motor, I should find something. Well, here's a good one. Lever motor. It's technically not a lever if it's a mechanical one though. They just call it lever on this game. And this one makes a sound too. Sounds almost like the switch being changed. I don't think it matters which position I leave it in. They all basically go into the station. Okay. Of course I need signals as well. I'm not sure which signals the path train uses, so I'm just gonna use subway signals because the path is a subway after all. They probably use signals like this on a switch. Okay, now how do I add scenery to the station and make it so that you can actually tour it as a passenger? Here's what I usually do. First I need an invisible track. I usually use this one because it's always at the correct height. Okay, here's what I'm gonna do. And then I just lift the invisible track up so that it's at the height of the platform, which is usually a really hard thing to do because sometimes I can't find the track anywhere. Here it is. Okay, now on this invisible track I need to put something called, let's see, This is basically a drivable person that's scripted as a train, so that when you go inside the cab, you see what the person would have seen, like in first-person mode or something. This allows you to tour the station as an actual passenger from the passenger's eye view and not from the train driver's perspective. What's really cool is I can add lots of very cool scenery to the station, and I can actually pose as the passenger and walk through all this. I'm going to extend this track as I build more at the station, but for now this is all that I've completed. Here's what else I need. I also need pillars to support the very heavy skyscrapers that are on top of this station, and the mall, of course, also. The entire city of New York weighs a ton, so I need something that can support all that. Most subway stations in New York have steel pillars, but I can't find any of those on this game, so instead I'm using concrete ones. Let's see. I'm trying to find it. I don't remember what it's called. Concrete bridge, concrete cable, concrete fence. Oh, here we go. Concrete pillar. It's a little bit taller than I need it to be. I make it that taller. Okay. What's this? This one's also too big. Of course, I can always make it shorter if I needed to. But first, let's see. What's this? Concrete platform. I might need something like this. It doesn't look concrete to me. It's too narrow. I need a wider one than that. Concrete post style third rail. Concrete road bridge. Everything except a concrete pillar. Concrete slabs. These are what I use to make the ceiling of the station because they have a bottom and a top. So I can actually put a floor on top of this on top of the ceiling, and you can actually walk on that. But it still has something underneath it, so it doesn't look like it disappears. It's really hard to find something like that. So far, this is all I've been able to find that does that. This makes a perfect ceiling when trying to make a train station you can go inside. Okay, what's this? Concrete. Not sure what that is. Huh. I didn't find it. Oh, let me just use a search filter and type pillar. That should make it a lot easier to find. Okay, now the game's frozen, waiting for me to Concrete pillar, double track deck with pillar. What's this? Oh, that's like a concrete bridge. I can't find the pillars anywhere. Where'd they go? Round pillar. Oh, this might work. Let's use these. These are going to be supporting the ceiling and the shopping mall that's on top of this. So I'm just going to have this run across this length. I'm not sure how tall I need it to be yet because I haven't really decided how tall the ceiling is going to be yet. Okay, I just realized I can't use these tracks. I need to use tunnel tracks because if I use these tracks, when you turn the camera up here, it looks like the train is basically traveling into a hole in the ground and not going through an actual tunnel. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use regular subway tracks for this part. Since we're not in the station anymore, I don't need these types. So delete all of this. Okay, there are all kinds of subway tracks I could use. I guess I'm going to use the subway track one-line walls. This one might work. The only thing I don't like about these tracks is they're not that bendy. Look at this. See that? Of course, I'm not going to need a curve that sharp, but still. They're still not that bendy even on wide-ish curves. Okay. But that can't be helped, I guess. Put the third rail on the correct side of the track. Now, make it so that it looks like the tunnel is connected to the station by making it closer. Something like that ought to work. Okay, that looks great. Now I'm going to make these tracks merge into one. It's really hard. The hard part about doing this is making it so that it doesn't look like there's a huge hole in the wall where the switch is. Oops. Okay, so use the one-sided tunnel here. Of course, you have to use the type of tunnel that only has one wall, because if you use two of them, you know they're going to like cross over each other and overlap. Here's what it looks like inside the switch. Looks pretty realistic, but to make it look even more realistic, I need to make sure there are absolutely no gaps where you would be able to look through it and see what's outside the station. This is often the hardest part of making a station you can go inside, because there's more places where you could actually see where the gaps are, and that makes it even harder. With the train, there aren't as many gaps you could see. So I'm going to build some more of these subway tunnel walls. Make sure these are the perfect distance from the track, which is a lot easier to do with these tracks. Something about this looks a little bit off. Must be the distance I put the platform at. Well, that's okay. Okay, make these merge. Connect this here. Make sure there are no gaps. Okay. Now when you look into the tunnel, this is what you'll see. Still got a long way to go if I want to make it so you absolutely cannot see any gaps. Usually when I make a subway station, I make it so that the ceiling is just as high as the tunnel height. Okay, here's what I'm gonna do. Let's see what the entrance to the tunnel, the entrance to the station looks like. Well, the tracks are different, but since they're brighter than the tracks we're looking at through here, it kind of makes it look. It kind of gives off the image that the tracks in the station are more lit than the ones in the tunnel, and that's kind of good. The only problem is the third rail is of a different distance from the tracks, so they don't match. Are any of these third rails the correct one though? Let's put a PATH train on a track real quick. Or a Washington, D.C. Metro. It doesn't really matter right now. And see how far it is from the third rail. Let's see. I need to look at the portion of the track that actually touches the third rail. Okay, here's one. These are called shoes. They connect to the third rail. It's touching the third rail, so I guess it wouldn't have any problem drawing power from it. But don't they usually go underneath the third rail? Well, as long as it's in a position where electricity will flow to it, it's no problem. It doesn't necessarily have to be on, it doesn't really matter if it's on top of or underneath it. Now I need to see if it's the correct distance. It's going to be hard when it's in here because the walls are getting in the way. Let me see. Turn the camera at the right angle. Okay, it looks like it's underneath the third rail here. No problem. Yeah, it's actually at the correct location to collect power. Okay, so it looks like it'll work with both of these third rails. No problem. It's probably the lights are probably gonna flicker when it goes from one third rail to the other, though. And there's probably gonna be sparks arcing from the third rail as well. Same thing happens every time it goes through a gap in the third rail. Okay, replace these British levers that for some reason the game gives you automatically with some other types of levers. Let's see, what kind do we have? Well, I typed motor to get the one I was looking for earlier. Lever motor. This one is okay, I guess. Okay. Put one here too. Probably don't want it touching the third rail. Though I'm not really sure how levers work on subway systems. I'll make it so that they're not facing the third rail, but then again it's still touching that one. Well, okay, this is a problem then. Well, The trains that go to World Trade Center come from the west, from New Jersey, so these tracks are going to have to be facing this way somewhere before they go into the tunnel. These curves aren't, well, they're kind of sharp. Let me try to make this one wider. The last thing you want is a subway derailing, especially in a tunnel. It's probably the hardest thing in the world to clean a train from a derailed tunnel. I mean, a train derailment in a tunnel. The only real way to know if this curve is too sharp or not is to try to put a train in it. If the subway tunnel is too sharp, obviously the train is going to hit the wall or something, like it's doing right here. So yeah, that's too sharp. It's also doing that over here on this side. Yeah, I need to widen that. Which means I need to make this hole in the ground bigger so that I can get to it. Yeah, the hole in the ground is really the problem. It gives me a confined space to work with. The other problem is that these trains are actually very, very long. So you have to be very careful when making these tunnels. I'm trying to make it so that they don't curve that much. Okay, let me try to widen them. Widen these curves out. As we all know, the sharpest curve is the one that's on the inside. So, if I test this one and the trains don't collide with the wall, we're pretty much good to go. It still kind of collides with the wall over here. Would you even notice that? Probably would. It does that here too. It's almost impossible to make a curve for this train because it doesn't want to accept any of them. It's too long. cars are too long. What I really need is those PA5 subway cars, because they're shorter a little bit. Okay. Apparently this curve is too sharp too, so what I'm gonna have to do is make it even wider. Okay, first of all, straighten these tracks out then. Okay, yeah, I guess that's okay. The problem is this switch is a little bit sharp now. This is going to take a while, isn't it? Simply making these curves the right width so that the trains won't hit the wall. Okay, I'm making this curve wider, a lot wider, and realigning it. Don't get it too close or it's going to try and make them attach. Well, it's kind of wide. If this is still too sharp, then I'm just gonna give up on this and work on something else for now. Well, it's staying inside the walls of the tunnel, isn't it? It's still staying. I have a feeling that sooner or later it's gonna hit the wall. Okay, it's still inside the tunnel. Man, they don't give you much clearance in these tunnels, do they? There's just barely enough for the train to get through it. It looks like the train is making it through the tunnel without hitting anything. Even on the sharp switches, it looks like. Yeah, they're still inside the wall. Let's go inside the tunnel real quick to see how much clearance there is between the train and the wall. There's very little clearance, actually. Like, just barely enough. A little bit closer and it's gonna hit the wall. The worst thing would be if the train... That's weird. There's a lot more clearance on this section though. Okay, I guess this is okay. Then the train's gonna pull right into World Trade Center. Okay, now. I usually have a chart telling me how tall everything's gonna have to be to make a proper roof and everything. Without any gaps at all. I don't remember where I put that chart, so I'm gonna have to start over from scratch. I'm basically gonna have to experiment with different heights from this beam that's gonna become the ceiling. Won't let me lift it for some. Oh, I'm not aligned properly with it. This beam is also gonna double as the floor of the next, of the floor of the mall. Why won't you let me? Okay. Okay, with this height, it looks like it'll work. Looks like there aren't any gaps. It looks like it's just slightly lower than that. Okay. We'll use this height for the ceiling then. Now I need to know how tall these pillars are going to be. So what I'm going to do is... It's the wrong button. That's not the one I wanted. I wanted the pillars. Get item, not that one. This is what happens when you put splines directly next to each other. It's so hard to click on the right one. Okay. How tall do these pillars have to be? to be perfectly flush with the ceiling, but without going through the next floor. 10. What just happened? The game is not doing anything. It looks like negative 10.16 meters, i.e. 10.16 meters below sea level, will be a good, what's the word I'm looking for? Okay, that's too high. I need to lower it a little bit. Still a little bit too high. Negative 14.22. Well, it fits underneath the ceiling and it doesn't go higher than the floor, so that'll work. So the pillars are going to be 14.22 meters below sea level. Well, these look good. They're all nice and neat, and they're not going to block your view of the train that much. I don't think I can put any pillars on these platforms though. There's probably not enough space. What I usually do is I put pillars in between the tracks as well, and then I put walls here. So here's what's gonna happen. The pillars also help to fill the gaps between the tracks that right here. In this gap, if you look through it, you can almost see right through the walls and know that this is not really underground. So to fix that, I'll usually get some of these pillars and put them in between the gaps. Have to be really careful to make sure these pillars aren't too close to the trains though. Usually as long as it's further away from the tracks than the third rail, it's not too close. Okay. This fills in the gap so you can't hardly tell that it's not on the ground anymore. Except for the ceiling, which I'll work on later. Right now though, we're focused on this. Gotta fill in this gap too. I'm not sure where this end's gonna go yet because I haven't finished that track. So for now, I'll just leave it over here. In fact, let's work on that track too. Okay, the pillars I've used are called round pillars, 1 meter, 10 meter spacing. The walls, the ceiling I use as well as the floor